Thanks very much. I'd just like to remind you what the Trial Centre and the people we work with as to what our missions are, which is to try to improve practice, to achieve best practice in healthcare and improve outcomes, both in Australia and internationally, through the best use of clinical trials research. That's both undertaking the trials, it's combining the evidence, and it's providing, integrating that with other information to inform practice and health policy. The approach of which trials to undertake is to undertake studies of high quality, to look at their potential impact on future practice and health policy and future research, to look at the likelihood of success related to track record and whether it's feasible, and to undertake studies that are likely to be of high value related to return on investment. The Trial Centre has undertaken now some 150 clinical trials in cancer, involving within Australia and internationally 850 sites, more than 20,000 patients enrolled in a range of studies. This work, though, is only possible through the collaboration with many national and international clinical trial groups. The CTC has been the coordinating centre for 5 national cooperative groups listed here, and has actually helped in the formation of those groups in terms of their original establishment. In the AGITG in gastrointestinal cancer, ANZGOG in gynecological cancer, ALTG in lung cancer, COGNO in brain cancer, and ANZUP in urogenital cancers. Each of those groups not only have been involved in undertaking trials within Australia, but we've worked in collaboration with groups internationally, particularly in North America and in Europe. So lots of international collaboration also needed to achieve the results that are going to impact on practice and policy. What have I done? I don't think that was part of my talk. I must have clicked on the hyperlink. That wasn't very clever, was it? We've also been collaborating with lots of others beyond being the coordinating centre. The most important of those are the long history with the ANZ Breast Cancer Trials Group, now Breast Cancer Trials, where we've been the statistical centre for that group and undertaking major clinical trials both in Australia and internationally to change practice for patients with breast cancer. Also collaborations with TROG, Melanoma Group and Primary Care in other aspects of some of their studies. There have been collaborations also with the breast and colorectal surgical groups, and I'll give you an example of some of that as we go through. And taking on the role of statistical centre for some of the international groups, particularly in gynecology. Work with within Sydney with the Sydney Catalyst in Translational Cancer Research, and with the Australian Genomic Cancer Medicine Centre looking at precision medicine trials in patients with rare cancers. So the flavour of this is that the great achievements that you'll see in relation to things we've been involved with is only possible through broad collaborations with a lot of people, both nationally and internationally. The trials we've undertaken have been in a wide range of areas of treatments: chemotherapy, radiation therapy, surgery, biological therapies and immunotherapies, and supportive care. Many of these studies have shown improvements in survival, patients living longer in breast cancer, germ cell cancer, colon cancer, glioma. Also, improvements in quality of life and cancer control in patients with breast, colon, gastric, a whole range of cancers shown there, and also in patients having treatments for palliative care. It's important to also understand not every trial that you undertake is going to lead to improvements in health outcomes. A number of the trials have shown a lack of benefit for treatments and cautionary notes. So, for example, the use of antidepressants for treating patients with cancer with depressive symptoms without a clinical diagnosis of depression did not lead to improvements in quality of life, and we've recommended that should not be therefore routinely used. The use of laparoscopic surgery, which we know has been a benefit in colon cancer, has not shown the same advantages in patients with rectal cancer, and in cervical cancer the outcomes have actually appear to be worse for the patients who've had the laparoscopic surgery. So it's important you test treatments that appear to be promising to see whether they work, rather than just assuming based on the results of earlier studies that they should be adopted. And that's also applied to a number of novel therapies. Not all of them have led to advances in healthcare, but it's helped us sort out the true advances from the ones which were not. Just to go through a couple of examples. The first one is to look at the role of sentinel node biopsy management for patients with breast cancer, the idea being that this can reduce the amount of surgery under the arm without removing all the nodes. Can you see less arm swelling, less lymphedema, and improvements in quality of life? This trial, involving over 1,000 patients, showed over the course of the first year and out to 5 years, less arm swelling in the group getting the sentinel node biopsy management and improvements in quality of life. And this is now routine practice in most major centres. A nice feature of this trial was also the incorporation of training of the surgeons into the study, so that it was both further developing the treatment that was under evaluation. Another example is the use of where the gene mutations can direct what treatment patients with cancer have using biological therapies such as cetuximab. So this particular treatment, which is an EGFR inhibitor, is looked at whether it can improve survival for patients with advanced cancer. A study that was undertaken by AGITG and the Canadian Cancer Trials Group with us. And that particular study showed that there were improvements in overall survival. Patients lived longer if they had the cetuximab, but only if they had a KRAS wild-type tumour type. Those that had a KRAS mutated type, no benefit whatsoever. So this demonstrates both the advantage of doing the trial to see whether patients might benefit, but also which patients might benefit. This trial and others like it have then led to changes both in terms of providing that treatment, but also the routine use of mutation testing for patients with colon cancer in order to better guide their treatments and also for future trials. There are many examples of the trials we've undertaken in the cancer area have required international collaborations, and those studies have often been led by overseas groups where we've provided important contributions and co-led those studies, but where we've not taken on the coordination role. But importantly, Australia has also coordinated many of the international efforts from Australia with other groups overseas taking part in studies that we're leading. So just listed 5 key ones there. Top Gear, Integrate, ENZA, DREAM and Outback. The important thing in the feature in clinical trials is you've got to have a good name. And you see that Australian trials, the Outback one in particular, if you've got a good name like that, that's part of the successful ingredients. But you can see that the range of studies in gastric cancer, prostate cancer, mesothelioma, which we'll hear more about, and chemotherapy and cervical cancer, all of those studies have required international collaboration led from this part of the world. One example of that is the Integrate study in gastric cancer. A treatment, regorafenib, in patients with advanced cancer showed they did better than best supportive care in having their tumour, time to the progression of the tumour significantly delayed. This has now led to a phase 3 trial. That's 2 minutes, is that right? I'm doing well then. 8 minutes to go, good. This has now led to a phase 3 trial, which we're leading in Asia, Australasia and North America to see whether this can translate also into survival benefits. A study that you'll hear more about from Anna is looking at the DREAM study of giving immunotherapy for mesothelioma. The results of this were particularly promising and are leading to a phase 3 trial, again led from here to address whether this can have impacts on overall survival. So the last one I'd like to mention are the significant growth in trials, so-called precision medicine trials, and we'll hear more about that from Mustafa later as well, on the growth of trials which can look at patients which have in rare subgroups or in rare cancers to identify treatments which might be effective in smaller groups of patients, but also looking at combining with common molecular profiles across different cancer types to provide information which might perform across those areas. The MOST program is an example of that, of looking at signal-seeking studies of targeted therapies in collaboration with the Garvan and the Genomics Medicine Centre. These types of studies involve enormous collaborations in basic science, industry, bioinformatics, biostatistics, and the actual running of the trials. So you're going to see the need for more collaborations rather than less as we go forward. There's also new methods required for these. So with smaller numbers, we need to look at, are there good surrogates that could be used for screening these treatments? Despite that, we're still going to need some form of controlled trials, albeit perhaps with smaller sample sizes, to still validate those findings. And we're going to see new regulatory frameworks, so this will be important for government as well, as to what evidence we'll need to advise in those areas. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody, our collaborators, our investigators, government, industry, patients and consumers for some of the things we've been able to achieve, and look forward to more of this in the future.